Right, here we go on to our second CXO Interactive panel, our final session of the day, focused on culture transformation, the real challenge. Firstly, I would like to take a moment to introduce all of the panelists. First up, we have Antoine Bouchacourt, who is VP of Asia for Shoestar. And Antoine has been leading the expansion of Shoestar across Asia, a company that helps organizations transform digitally through the power of video. In his spare time, though, Antoine likes to cook and spend time with his wife and his newly born son. Congratulations, Antoine. What an exciting time for you. Then next we have Freddie Lowe, who is Regional Head of Information Technology at Fujifilm. And Freddie's quote that he lives by is, "Digital transformation starts with the mindset change." And if there was one key takeaway from this event, then that's definitely it. I heard it featured upon in the previous panel multiple times, and I'm sure it will be here as well. Then we have Navati Jayaram, who is the Vice President of Head of Transformation for Societe Generale. Navati is a service veteran, UN peacekeeper, an ICF accredited coach and author. Wow, busy man. Which helps and he helps organizations deliver great customer experiences through transformation and maximize people's potential through coaching. And finally, we have Wesley Bors, who is former RD and E program leader at Ecolab. And during his 15 years in corporate R&D, Wesley got more and more passionate about the chemistry between people versus product. Very relevant for today. But in parallel and in his spare time, he has completed a full Ironman and 10 marathons within 3 different continents. Again, it seems a panel full of very, very busy and active people. So with that, we'll get started. Antoine, if you want to give a bit more detail about yourself, I'll hand over. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me well. So yes, my name is Antoine. I've been in Asia for about 15 years now. I'm originally from France, and I've worked in various startups in the technology environment, and more recently in this company called Shoestar. And what we do as a company is we help organizations produce video content at scale across the company. And so that's helping them create video content such as for internal communications, for L&D, for training. So we're really at the heart of a lot of those topics that are related to culture transformation, because we are accompanying a lot of our clients or companies out there to transform digitally, to transform a lot of the things that generally do, or a lot of the stuff that generally communicate through video moving forward. And so hopefully I'll have a few great things to share, or a few insights to share in the conversation. And then I'll let the other members of the panel introduce themselves as well, maybe starting with Freddie.
Yeah, thanks, Antoine. Hi, I'm Freddie. I'm based out in Singapore. I'm a Singaporean. So apparently, I'm with Fujifilm. In my past career, I was the CIO for Ralph Lauren, and then in Sybase 365 HP, and also Bridgestone before I joined Fujifilm. I did a major part of my career is on change. So transformation is something that is constant. So transforming the digital part for this organization is to bring everybody together and rethink about repositioning them how to drive technology that is an enabler to help them rather than to be putting a threat to their livelihood. So on a personal note itself, I'm a softball player for Singapore. I'm a pitcher. And then now I'm a veteran. So I represent Thailand for the Masters. And I also have a avid single handicapper in golf. So yeah, so this is me. And I have to have a good session with all of my peers in this session. So to you, Navati.
Thanks, Freddie. Hi, everyone. I'm Nivarthi Jairam, based out of Bangalore, India. So I've been involved with enterprise transformation initiatives for more than a decade now. and have had working experience with Indian Air Force for more than 2 decades and moved on to corporate world for the last decade. So great to share the forum with all the experts here, and I'm very eagerly looking forward to making valuable contribution. I recently published my first book called Unlearning, which I believe is a very integral part of vision, whether it is personal, professional, or organizational. So I'm eagerly looking forward to hear from my fellow experts in this conversation about cultural transformation. Wesley, all over to you.
Thanks a lot, Nivarti, and great to be here with you, with Antoine, and with Freddie. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Wesley Boers, so originally from Belgium. Originally also an engineer biochemistry, so I spent 14 years working a lot with organic chemistry, the first 12 years at Procter & Gamble, where I traveled across the world, met different kind of consumers, did a lot of in-home visits, so a lot of consumer-centric work. And there I saw, you can have great innovation, you can have great technology, you can have very smart people, and sometimes, it really clicks, but sometimes it just doesn't. And that's where culture comes into play. And that, for me personally, brought me on a career path towards coaching, so very similar to Nivarti, although I have not written my own book, so kudos for that, Nivarti. And today, to make a long story short, we traveled as a family from Europe to Singapore. And today I help leaders, teams, organizations, with optimizing their team dynamics. So I'm really interested in the systemic aspect of things, the relational tissue of organizations, a bit of chemistry in between people, which is intangible, but if you become more and more aware of it, it can really help you, especially on a cultural transformation path. And that's what I hope to share with you, a couple of key points around this topic. So that's a bit about me, and I think we can go to the questions. Over to you, Antoine.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Freddie. Thanks, Nivarti, and thanks, Wesley. Great to have you guys on board. So, we have a few questions that we're going to go through and that are going to structure the conversation over the next kind of 40 minutes. And so, let's kick off. So the first question was culture transformation. Why is this the real challenge? And where's normally the pressure situated? So I'll start maybe with a couple of thoughts here. I think one of the main challenges in culture transformation is the fact that people are just resistant to change, and they in companies most staff will have their own way of doing things. They think that these things work, and because it's always been done the same way, they're kind of blind to some of the inefficiencies that have creeped up in the way things are done. But in addition to that, and I think how do you kind of get that resistance to change shifted, I believe is around communicating why you are why you are introducing those changes. I do believe that a lot of the challenges around culture transformation come from the fact that the purpose of that culture transformation is not communicated properly to the wider team. So, I think it's important for the leadership in general in teams to communicate clearly why the change is inevitable, why certain processes or certain things need to improve, who is going to be involved, and ultimately communicate clearly as well on what are the results going to be, what are we going to achieve together as a team undertaking those changes or this transformation. So these are just a couple of thoughts for now. What do you think, Freddie?
Yeah, thanks, Antoine. I think it covered most of them. But anyway, I think the notion on the resistance of change is constant, as for example, in Asia, where we reach in culture and, with the people that is in the organization, the corporate culture, all this puts into making the entire change of the technology or in the digital transformation perspective that is coming on board, that it actually poses this common challenge that I encounter. The resistance very much on the comfort zone they are in, that they don't want to learn new things. And they find that by doing that, to automate using RPA, to automate their work, machine learning, AI, they will make them lose their job. So job security could be another area that that create the kind of stress to them to cooperate or to move things forward. So Antoine make a good point. I think transparency of the objective that is driving towards from a company level, from a top management down, and streamlining the process and telling them how to reposition them to do the work more efficiently and their true value that we can bring up to them. It is such a transformation that is taking place. So pretty much my take on this portion. Maybe I'll hand it to Navati. What do you think about it now, Navati?
Yeah, great points. What I have seen is mostly when we talk about transformation initiatives, the focus is more on either the technology or the practices. And most of the organizations go by structure defines culture, and we end up, restructuring. That is true, but it takes, I've seen that it takes a lot of time for us to essentially change the culture we have. And in many cases, it may not specifically happen in certain teams where the leadership is indifferent. So the challenge also I see is the lack of focus specifically on driving cultural transformation as one element of digital transformation journey. And that creates a lot of pressure. And teams end up saying, yes, we are being asked to change the way we do things, but we don't see that reflecting or a similar change in how the leadership is dealing with us. So that is also a challenge. So those are some elements, and I'm really happy to see that, having a panel discussion on something like cultural transformation, which shows that yes, there is definitely focus being shifted from driving a technology transformation or practices transformation. The importance and significance of cultural transformation within the digital transformation journey is being brought out. That's my take in short at this time. Wesley, what would you like to add?
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys, for all the builds. Yeah, let's see how I can add on that. So for me, a key thing is an organization. It's a living system, so it's not a machine. And often we approach things, we change things in a very analytical way because we're all brought up analytically. We have an analytical background, analytical education. And often we forget to see it's business of people because, yeah, like the former CEO of IBM said, culture is not part of the game, it's the game. So you need to be aware that you're working with people. And I know we also talked about leadership, and that's for me the key person that is a bit the seed of the change, because that leader not only needs to execute change, he also needs to embody it, because at the end of the day, the growth of a company cannot exceed the growth of its leadership. So that's a critical bottleneck. And as you see in planes with the safety cards, when the oxygen mask drops, you need to put it on yourself first. So that's an invitation to the leader to also do that first himself. And if others see him doing that, then they will follow. And I think it's also very important that you don't enable the full organization or expose the full organization to change, because then as a living system, like we are as an organism, if something new enters our body, then our immune system will say, this is something new, I don't know you, you could be a potential threat to me, so I'm going to kill you. And so you need to plant seeds locally with local trusted leaders that can create a bit of safety net for that people, and they can be a bit the catalyst of change and go on and on. So that's a bit the key points for me. So where's the pressure normally? For me, it's the leader who needs to embody it and put that change mask on first. So I hope that's useful. So Antoine, back to you.
Yeah, excellent. I liked your quote from earlier. There was one that I remember from seeing in a presentation a few years back, which was about the quote was "Culture eats strategy for breakfast," and which I think is a very famous quote, and saying essentially that strategy is important, but it's a powerful and empowering culture will be the route to success, even more so than just a well thought strategy. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting sentence. The second question that we have is, what are the key do's and don'ts related to culture transformation? For me, when I saw this question, one of the main thoughts that came to mind was around, and Nivarti alluded a bit to that earlier, is the lack of commitment, potentially. So you are coming in with ideas to transform an organization, but then there may be maybe a lack of commitment, or even the leadership team that kind of forgets to lead by example, to adopt that new culture. So it is an ongoing process, that needs to be. Culture transformation is an ongoing process that needs to be properly managed, that needs to be properly tracked. And also along the way, you want to communicate on the progress being made by each team or by each individual in the process of that culture transformation. So one, I guess, of the main don't is don't lose focus and make sure that you are following through with what you ought to achieve as part of the process. What do you think, Freddie?
Yeah, thanks, Antoine. I think the first question had covered a holistic point of view. So, from my opinion and my experience of doing transformation, very much is like communication, clear directions that lead by example, as what Wesley have mentioned, that the top management that is formulating this roadmap has to come down very clearly, specifically on this journey of the transformation. And you've got to break it down in a smaller, achievable perspective. And then translating to the native team members in each country, that how it plays a part from a strategy into individual that is part of this entire transformation journey that is taking place. So if you are able to communicate a very clear communication path of onboarding, breaking down to workshops and providing training and understanding what is going to be coming up and how it's going to benefit them, and let them experience it with some demos or some workshops and so on, it will create that soft feel of, rather than just reading from a piece of paper or a slide that they are going through. So communication, of course, involving the HR as a key driver of this change, and using technology, digital transformation as a tool to drive this concurrently with them, will definitely a plus point into getting in place. And as I mentioned, bring the native champions into the session, language, culture. They can fit into it and drive the message clearly to create a success for the culture transformation. The don't is like going in, hiding bits and pieces of work, like a piecemeal. Avoid doing that. That's not going to bring us anywhere. At the end, you're going to cause a lot of confusion and stress. And at the end of the day, it will lead to a time bomb of a potential failure. So that's my take on this portion. So maybe Nivarti, what do you think about this, man?
Yeah, I agree with those points. I have to add, in terms of do, is one major thing, cultural transformation should start at the top. So as Antoine and Wesley also highlighted, and Wesley used a beautiful metaphor to say that, put on your mask first. So it goes that, okay, what are you changing in order to make things easier for the team? So that's one of the definite do's. And the major don't, when we talk about organizational culture, there is no single organizational culture. It's an accumulation of subcultures within each team or each business unit. And that is driven by the kind of leadership we have in that particular business unit, or even up to the first level manager that is part of a team. So when we are talking about driving cultural transformation, the biggest way to approach, or good way to approach cultural transformation, is to identify the culture of each team or the business unit or an IT unit that you are trying to change, and customize what you need to change for that particular division or a team or a unit. So if you try to templatize a cultural transformation, I think it would, grossly we have seen that fail. So the biggest don't templatize and customize cultural transformation to the needs of each team unit or an IT unit, and that cuts into an organizational culture which we want to drive for the organization betterment and driving better value. Wesley?
Thanks, Nivarti. I think, very solid build from your end. I fully sympathize that. Like you need to customize it. There is no one paint that goes over the full cultural transformation, because again, it's an organization is a living system. And like in our body, every organ is different. You have the heart, the lungs, so everything has a different need, has a different job to do, and you need to respect that. A couple things about do's and don'ts. One that I witnessed also myself in my corporate career is you also need to respect the present and also the past, because like in organizations, nothing ever disappears. If there was a certain person that was kicked out, maybe for the wrong reasons, people still stay loyal to that person. To give an example, or a certain division was cut for cost reasons, and people still have a certain connection with that. You can never minimize these things. And once I saw, a senior vice president coming in, and he said, we're going to do some new stuff. We're going to generate great numbers next year. And for that, I'm going to create with you a new culture. But the thing that really struck me was he never talked about the current culture. And that's, I think, a key invitation from me to the audience as well, is really tap into the current culture. A bit what Nivarti was saying, every division or every floor, like when I went in a building, every floor had his different atmosphere with different buzz. One division was really silent and working. The others were really out loud and extrovert. And so you need to respect that. And another key do is create this common desire for growth, and to be very open on that, on the motivation why you do that. That's a key thing, because at the end, you talk about transformation. And in transformation, something or somebody will always have to pay the price of change. And that's, I think, also what Freddie was referring to, is like job security. If you go through change, it's very critical as a leader that you say, okay, if we stay as is, if we don't do anything, the cost of staying the same will be X, Y, and Z. That could be large, that could maybe be have a high price. Or if we change, there also will be a cost, because some things will need to change, but this we will get as a benefit. And that's, I think, another thing to really, if I talk about communication as well, is talk about the price of change versus the price of change. So that's, I think, my 2 cents on this question. Back to you, Antoine.
Thanks, Wesley. So we had a third question: what challenges are faced while undertaking cultural transformation in organizations, and how to overcome them? I do believe we've talked a little bit already about the type of challenges we're facing, but how to overcome them. I think it's one of the main things is you really got to have your team on board with what you're trying to do. And so the one way to really overcome those challenges is investment in people, investment in their skills. So, investing in upskilling them, in training them, so that they come on board with that cultural transformation that you're trying to implement in the team. It's not going to come if they don't feel that you have their best interest at heart, and I think showing that you invest in their future, in their skills, is one way to overcome some of those challenges, some of that resistance to change, some of that fear of the unknown that we can see in some traditional organizations out there. That's what I have. How about you, Freddie?
Thanks, Antoine. Very interesting. On the portion and cultural transformation, I do a lot of digital transformation, but I think this time around of my career, it is interesting that it was driven down from top down. That's step one. And then after that, we actually have a lot of engagement from a HR, human resource perspective, that actually driving a cultural transformation that helps the people understand to embrace the change that is going to be taking place on the process, how we are getting our job done. But having to say all this, you need a tool to come in. That's where the digital transformation comes in to enhance the way we do our work, to automate, and a paradigm of shift of doing things that is manual. Then now we are moving things to be automated. But of course, people may find that what I'm going to do, I'm spend X hour of time, spending time to get my job done. Now I only spend a couple of minutes. But take a step back. The time taken there for them to do the work, but on the analysis portion of the work to analyze our business value that they are trying to get this set of information to be processed, is only a ratio of maybe 90% time or 95% of the time to do the manual work, and only spend with only 5-10% to deliver the message to the receiving party, could be the management or to some decision making. So putting in trainings, collaboration with HR, driving the strategy of putting it for portion in, and then of course adding in the breaking it down with the strategize of each culture of the especially in MNC, there are multiple regions and countries that we need to deal with, and that will see true value of bringing more success to overcome the challenge that is putting forward in a transformation exercise that is will encounter most of the time, right? So that's my opinion on this perspective. Maybe Navati, back to you on your views. Thanks.
Thanks, Freddie. A few of the challenges that I can talk about is one, many times the cultural transformation or any transformation initiatives, we tend to bring in experts from outside. And when they are trying to drive the change, the teams or even the leadership at certain stage would feel that these people don't understand how it is done here, how the work happens here, how the organization operates. And the best way to get that more positivity into driving cultural transformation in teams is to have ambassadors from within the team who can drive the transformation for the teams. Then there is more positivity, more optimism in driving that change, because people tend to relate to that person. This is somebody who is part of us, wanting us to change. That is one of the elements. Now, the second challenge that we also look at is, as Wesley was talking about, leadership being part of it. At many times, we see that leaders come back and say, yes, I have done this change. I have changed how I operate. I have tried to change the culture. But what we end up is that change is not visible to the team. That means even though the leader, she has integrated or ingrained certain changes is behaviors or habits and the patterns, but that is not visible to the team. So the feedback mechanism is something which is very important to validate the change that a person is making and whether it is actually impacting the people who are supposed to be seeing that change. And if I have to quote another one, we all try to, as part of cultural transformation, we try to move the teams from a culture of competition to culture of collaboration. But we all need to understand we've been born and brought up right from our childhood to compete with somebody who is better than us. So how do you change that perception of competing with somebody in the team to collaborating with them to become a truly high-performing team or high-performing organization from that point of view? So when you think about that from an organization perspective, we need to relook at how you undertake our performance appraisals. Also look at how you reward and recognize people. If you keep recognizing individual contributions, the culture of collaboration may not actually come out at the significant level. So we need to move away from how you traditionally reward and recognize people or appraise people for their performance and move differently to recognizing teams or rewarding teams. That's something I think 2 or 3 challenges which I have personally seen and how you can actually look to overcome them. Wesley, you would like to add something?
Great points, Nivarti. It reminds me of my days also at P&G, where I worked a couple of years in the front-end innovation. And of course, front-end innovation much more fails than the things that really come out of it. And then, you need to have different OKRs. It's not the volume that you produce or the net outside sales. It's more like, the learning you create over the number of experiments you did. So really to boost an experimental organization, because if you don't try stuff, if you don't make things real, because in a corporate context, we like to discuss things, we like to overanalyze things, and then you have paralysis by analysis. But not often there is real execution or doing, and that's the thing I would like to build on is have the right sets of KPIs or OKRs to that sense if you really want to innovate, if you really want to transform. So that's building on your part, Nivarti. And what also came to mind, you were talking about external people coming in and you need the ambassadors, because at the end of the day, people don't resist change. But they resist being changed. So it's really important that they see themselves as maybe the initiator or the catalyst of change. And then a couple of questions you can ask yourself during change is, where is the impulse coming from? A bit like Nivarti was saying, is the impulse for us to change coming from within the team? Or is it coming from outside? That's already a very different dynamic. And if it comes from outside, maybe we need to understand then why there is a certain change, because otherwise resistance will go up. And the second one is, who owns the change? Who has the first right of say? Because at the end of the day, if you need to do new stuff, you need also have the right decision power, and you need to be empowered. So that's a clear thing as well. You need to have this decisiveness. And at the end of the day, also look back how much in the history did we change as an organization? And if it changed, what were the success drivers? And if it was not changed, what was holding it back? So these are things to think about in terms of challenges of cultural transformation. And there's one thing, it's a bit provocative that I also share with organizations I work with is, because we always love to know where we will end up in. But if you transform, if you really follow the literal definition, you don't know in the beginning where you will end. So that's a bit of transformation. How easy can you let go of your initial thought outcome? And if you can do that, if you can let the process lead itself, then potentially much more nicer things will get to you at the end, instead versus you really trying to keep it in a certain direction. And as one metaphor says, that the caterpillar doesn't know it becomes the butterfly. So that's also a thing I like to share is how eager are you to let go of the control or not during this process? All right, back to you, Antoine.
Yeah, thanks, Wesley. Those are very good points. Time's passing, time's flying, so maybe we can cover the next two questions in one go. What is the culture needed for digital transformation or to promote innovation, and kind of how do you empower then your teams to adopt innovation? To your point, I think Wesley, you mentioned empowering, and I think that's really a key word here on, how do you empower your teams and how do you help them adopt innovation? It's about empowering them and training them. And so I have an example of a company that we work with, Estée Lauder Companies, which a couple of years ago undertook a massive change in the way they train their staff. They used to travel mostly and have a lot of costs associated to essentially having teams travel around the region in all across Asia Pacific. But a couple of years ago, they thought that they needed to move that training in video content, and the only way they could produce the amount of video content that they needed to train their teams was to empower their staff to become content creators themselves. And so they went through a whole program of training staff to become trainers themselves, and kind of train the trainers, where they learn how to create video content, they learn how to create storyboards and so on, and then they put together the content themselves to train their teams. And so it achieved a few things. First of all, obviously, they decreased the cost of that of training, but also they moved from a one-off training event to an ongoing training culture where throughout the year, content was created, new training material was created, and new training material was consumed by their teams. And it was all from empowering their teams to become these creators, these trainers themselves. So I think that's a very good example of how you empower your teams to adopt innovation and how you implement digital transformation within an organization. How about you, Freddie?
Yeah, thanks, Antoine. I think I fully agree with Antoine's approach of train the trainer as one of the cost factor reduction, and also getting the people to have commitment that they are not just learning something for themselves, they are learning something to help in the journey, to pass on the knowledge to the fellow colleagues. And then most importantly, the human capital investment by the company will also be enriched, and empowering the staff with knowledge and have a clear definition of their existing role, transforming roles and responsibility, transforming together with the journey of the transformation will make them feel that they are part of the success of the journey of this kind of transformation that bring the cultural part, the digital transformation. Basically, change is between the science and the art. If you handle with care, like our fellow panelists have mentioned, you have a strategy, but you need a team to blend in the culture, then to create the success to flow, empowering the team members to able to communicate effectively as part of the commitment, they will lead to a joint success as an organization as a whole. That's my take on that. What about you, Navati? What do you think? Thanks, everybody.
Great points, Antoine and Freddie. So I believe the leadership again comes, front here. If you have to create teams that are empowered, I think we need to start not just delegating tasks, which we generally do. We need to delegate authority to make decisions. Of course, within the boundaries of limitations that we would look at, but that delegation of authority to make decisions is a key driving factor in creating empowered teams. And another element is creating that psychological safety, to overcome that fear of failure. of innovating something which doesn't work. So those are two elements which can definitely drive innovative culture in organizations. So what we at Societe Generale we do is we run a program called Catalyst year on year, and that asks for innovative ideas from everybody in the organization. And we select top 3 ideas based on the pitch and the feasibility of those innovations. And we would actually give them exclusive time to work on those innovative products or solutions. So employees end up working in a startup culture with a sponsor assigned on their innovation ideas itself. That's how we are doing to promote or build innovation culture in our organization. Wesley, your thoughts?
Yeah, all great builds. And looking at the time, I'll keep it short. But for me, the thing that you really need to do to promote innovation is, I said it before, but is to do stuff. So the path reveals itself by walking it. So you need to make things real. You need to experiment. And by making things real, you can touch it, you can smell it, you can feel it, you can look at it, hear it. And if you make it all sensorial, then you can integrate learning and adapt it and improve it. And that's often what I also saw before in my experience is we keep everything too conceptual and we talk too much and always we put all the eggs in one basket and we bet on one big leap of faith. So like in this traditional waterfall projects, then all the eggs go in the basket and after 1.5 years, you will expose it to the consumer and then hold your breath and cross the fingers. But what you need to do is the contrary, and I think with Agile, with Lean, you see it all over the place, is constantly experiment and expose it to your key customer, to your key consumer, whether it's internal or external, and get that feedback quickly. Because if you do small steps of learning, then you can easily adapt and you don't become too productive and in love with that solution. So that's it, make it real. All right, back to you, Antoine.
Thanks.
And gentlemen, I'm gonna just chime in here. That was a very engaging exchange, and I personally enjoyed it. Just before I go to the floor questions, there are quite a number coming in. Let me just push one of these comments to you guys. I think there was a comment from Jess, I think to one of the answers that Wesley has mentioned about the cultural transformation challenges is basically a lack of transparency and communication, and absolutely critical to seek to listen to the people doing the work rather than assuming what is right for the organization. So it's basically listening to the ground level feedbacks as well. One question that I'd like to bring up to the panel, let me just push this off to you guys. And I think that there were quite a few of these probably embedded in the narratives that you were sharing. But maybe one or two of you can give some examples, clear examples of digital transformation initiatives that have been implemented in your company, and how do you measure success? I'll let Antoine decide who should say that.
I think Nivarti wanted to jump in on that one.
Yeah, let me take that first hit at that. So as part of my earlier role with ANZ, Australia New Zealand Bank, we ran a digital transformation program for transforming our operational processes. So the intent of the program was to digitize the processes as much as we can so that we bring down the customer dependency on the contact center. So ideally, that would give us or encourage people to engage us in more digital channels rather than going through, the channel of contact center. So from that point of view, the success measurement was for us to see how much the load on contact center is coming down as we progress through the transformation journey. So the measure of success for us was to see that have we achieved or are we consistently progressing, reducing our dependency on the contact center for customer support which means our digital channels through which we are trying to engage people or offer services are more effective and are actually resulting in what the customers are looking for. So that is something we did successfully, and we could measure that there is a significant increase in the digital channel utilization, correspondingly visible in the reduction of workload on the contact centers we have. Yes, Antoine, you like to go next?
Can I share my experience on the recent success that I've implemented in the current organization I'm in? The digital transformation was in the interesting portion that it enabled us to reduce our risk of business continuity and the efficiency to work, the ability to work anytime, anywhere. And the key factor started off with the optimization of telecom expense. And then when we realized that there are technologies that we need to put in to leverage on the internet age that we are driving in. So besides looking into reducing the cost of the operation, how do we do the effectiveness of the staff ability to collaborate and able to work efficiently without boundaries or without any device control compromise, and not forgetting in a secure manner. So overall measurement of success is of course to look at the cost investment versus the return of investment or cost reduction. But the key value, what we saw is that the team member became more collaborative, they save time on travel, and effectively able to communicate cross-border in different countries at different time. They can bring everybody in at a click. And the efficiency is intangible, but you can see the improvement of the operation. So that is some portion of the digital transformation that I recently have created for the organization. But with, of course, with a very strong support with our top management to see the value we are putting in place. Right. So back to Wesley. Any comment, Wesley?
Maybe I can just write on that through another question, and maybe Wesley can comment on that. Is what do you think are the key success factors to implementing digital transformation by your, within your own industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a very broad question as well. I think that the common denominator for me, and yeah, that's what I said in my introduction. I fell in love with the chemistry between people versus the product chemistry. I'm not a digital or IT expert. I come more from consumer goods. But what I see across different industries, it's always, what is the deeper why of the transformation? Why are we doing this? What is the cost of same versus the cost of change? And who are we doing it for? So, and that's what I learned in, especially also in P&G. It's very consumer oriented. Today you hear a lot about human-centered design. So I think that was one of the key success stories. If you talk about transformation, but also digital transformation, is invite your customer, your client in discussions. Because often I speak with innovation teams and I said, when is the last time that you talked to your customer? And maybe they never did it. So they only optimize based from their own model of the world as a designer. And that's a pitfall that I also fell into one time or nothing, because you know the ins and outs of your product. So key success factors is know your audience, know your early adopter, who's really craving for that need. And then based on their needs, create like a pull model instead of pushing your solution to the market. That's what I would say.
That's a very good point. Anybody else has a perspective to this as well? Beyond customer experience and success?
I think it's more contextual question because it depends on what aspect of digital transformation you are looking at, and the success factors would be driven by the outcome you are looking for and how you would validate that success. So it's really contextual question. For example, if you talk about a real-time payments transformation, journey we undertook again at the ANZ. So the intent was to set up an entirely new payments platform for Australian banking industry and enable 24/7 payment transaction feasibility. Now the success factor for that would be whether the customers are able to transact live as and when they are initiating that transaction, then waiting for next work hour to come up, and how much does that in terms of giving the revenue generation for the banks improve the overall turnover for the banks. So it depends on the context of the digital transformation journey that we are on, and then that would define how we would look at success. It's a very broad question, as Wesley mentioned.
Yeah, and maybe I would pose the last question for today. And this is, I think, there was a conversation around, appointing change ambassadors and, related to cultural shifts in the organization. And what's your experience so far? I mean, do you think there is a need to have a change culture ambassador for each department, or should this be one person that is driving change and finding stakeholders? What's your thoughts on these? Anyone?
Okay, so from my point of view, what we have seen is that, yes, there needs to be a single point ownership for the change. That means there needs to be someone who is accountable for that change, driving that change, but the execution part is seen more fruitful when we have change ambassadors within the respective teams or the business units. There is a sense of belongingness that comes through, that this is part of us, who is wanting us to change. That means there is seen more genuineness for that need to change, which makes it more receptive for changing. So that's what we have seen, and where it is not, it becomes, the ownership becomes somebody else's to change than the team itself, and that creates more resistance. That has been my visible experience, having somebody within the team as ambassador and not having. So that's my take on it. Anybody else likes to add?
Yeah, maybe I can.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Sorry, go ahead, Freddie.
Sorry. So having an ambassador is important, but the department level, I think that portion probably to the gravity of the change as an ambassador. Well, how we actually created this change, digital transformation journey in my current experience is to bring the champion of the country who has the company culture as a background, and also the in-country culture, the behavior of the staff and the react to messages delivering to them before we break into the department ambassador, which is important, what I would call the champion of the change driver, that will combine together to form a holistic change agent to drive the success of a particular transformation exercise. This is my point of view on that. Maybe Antoine, back to you. Sorry, buddy, I cut in.
No, not at all. Thanks, Freddie. Yeah, I mean, I can just share quickly again about that example at Estée Lauder companies. That huge program that they undertook to change the way they train people across their organization was done across 8 different brands and 14 different markets. And they had, of course, that initiative was a regional initiative with a key leader at the top who was initiating that change, but then they had identified key ambassadors or champions of that program in each brand regionally and then in each market as well, just to make sure that the adoption was there and that someone was kind of responsible for getting everyone else on board. So I would say that question, yes, there is definitely a need for change or culture ambassadors in each department or each BU or each teams that you're trying to make that change.
Mm-hmm. And actually, there's one last question that just came in. I thought, given you're the last session today, I'm going to just push it to you guys. Another question from the floor. They're actually asking for actual real examples, right? Might be from your experience or from what you know from others. Is there any specific ones? Just one perhaps, that has shown a successful cultural transformation?
Cultural transformation, yes, we can talk about when it is driven top down. In ANZ, we had a CEO suddenly coming out and one day saying we are going agile as an organization. So it was a massive overall statement for the company as well as the people. So the whole exercise of even trying to identify who are all culturally fit for the new ways of working went on for almost 1 year. So that means each and every employee of the organization had to go through an assessment whether they are culturally fit and reapply for the roles that they think they would fit into. So that kind of focus was put on people being culturally fit for the work they are planned to do, or the way the organization wants to move ahead, what culture the organization wants to embody, in the journey forward. So if somebody was found culturally not fit or indifferent, it's not that they were thrown out, but they would at least know that, okay, here is a person who probably has different mindset than what we are looking for, and then align efforts to make that person change that kind of perception or behaviors or the beliefs they carry. So that is one definite example I can quote from what I have gone through personally as part of that transformation exercise as well.
Yeah, maybe one last example from me as well is,
sure.
Yeah, like in P&G, it's all growth from within. So you start at certain entry levels, and then so the next CEO is already know because he will come or she will come from within the company. And yeah, the last couple of years there's also a big shift because now there's much more emphasis on connect and develop. So creating corporate ventures within the portfolio of P&G, and so they will interact with academia, with universities, with other tech players, and create this efficient ecosystem. Because that's also, I think, globally a trend that we're watching. We're a global village. Everything is interconnected, and I think one of the panelists said it before. It's not anymore being competitive as a company and creating your own or to maximize the shareholder return. But it's also creating a very efficient ecosystem, so compete between ecosystems, and that's, I think, where we need to go towards. We focus now a lot in this talk around culture transformation within a company, but I think it's exactly the same if you start to partner up and create these effective connect and develop partnerships. So that's a bit my last insights.
Thank you for that. I think for my part, I think listening to this exchange, I would say cultural transformation is never easy. It requires changing the hearts, minds, and skills of the workforce. To support the desired culture. In some way, it requires even a set of core values, right? In addition to company mission or vision that resonates with the business priorities. And with that, I want to thank all of you here for this very, very engaging session. A very apt session to wrap up today's